Arlen, how you doing today?
Yeah, I'm doing fine. I mean, it's been a crazy few weeks. This election has been so close. My anxiety level is up. My fear is up. It's getting too close to, a very consequential election that'll change our whole country, and it scares me. Um, but at the same time, the other good stuff is that when I travel around Vermont, I'm seeing a lot of color in the trees. The leaves are changing. It's beautiful, and the weather's good this week. So there's some good and there's some bad.
Well, it certainly is beautiful in Vermont in the fall, and even with our later and later seasonal changes, at least when it gets colder, you still get those beautiful leaves. So that is very, very nice. And we're getting it here in Maryland, although the oaks, I was looking for some acorns for my wife because she's doing for her kids at school. She's doing a class on trees and, how they grow and all that. And actually, it's a sky is falling. Now that I think about it, Chicken Little sky is falling. Apparently, an acorn falls on Chicken Little's head. She thinks the sky is falling. So Mindy wants some acorns to help with that as a visual and, physical, not just visual, but tactile aid, if you will. But there aren't any acorns. There are some oaks, but not many acorns. Arlen, you mentioned what we've heard over and over. And when I say over and over, every 4 years, at least, I think probably since 2000, if not before, this has been the most consequential election of our lifetime. Why do you think, rather than debating whether these elections really are that important, why do you think we are perceiving them as this critically, this critical? Did we always? I mean, I don't remember back before really, I guess 76 would be the first election I was really paying attention, Carter versus Ford, and it didn't feel that important. Why do you think now has it changed, or have we always viewed elections in apocalyptic terms?
Well, you can see now that it's so even. Everything is so even. You've got one side feels very strongly, doesn't want to even think or talk to the other side, and that goes for both of them. So, it's a very consequential and important election. And it seems to me like Donald Trump is getting even crazier than he has been. And he's been very crazy, as we all know. But I think he's doubling down on everything. I think he's getting scared, or he's trying to push his people to the polls and by scaring them.
Why do you think, Arlen, people are so view the other side with such disdain? Because I don't. I mean, I really don't. I'm happy to talk to Trump voters, conservatives, call them what you will. I have no problem talking to them. I often have less trouble discussing the election with Trump supporters, even though I'm most certainly not one, than I do with Harris voters. In fact, I found that some Trump voters are more open to criticism of Trump than Democratic voters are open to criticism of Harris. So why do you think, and let's just, rather than pointing the finger at either side, why do you think it is now that so many people seem incapable of having a civil conversation with somebody who may be voting for someone other than their preferred candidate?
Because unlike other elections, other times in the past, I think this particular time, it's just so, reality is different for both sides. We don't see things the same. When you look at January 6th, Donald Trump, back in 2021, Donald Trump says it's a love fest, everything was beautiful. And, the rest of us can look on the screen and see, in video what was really going on and how horrible it was. So you have two different realities right now. You have a very pro-Trump MAGA point of view, and you get it from Fox News and their cousins and copycats. And then you get, more of a mainstream, I think, in other, as far as the Harris campaign goes. I don't think she's saying anything extreme, but he certainly is.
Well, I mean, I would certainly posit that her refusal to acknowledge any area where she might find issue with the way Joe Biden governed is pretty extreme. I mean, if you look at the unfolding genocide in Israel, this is one of the greatest evils the world has seen in 75 years. And, well, at least let's go back, at least since the Nixon bombing of Cambodia, where 3 million people were slaughtered by the U.S. Military, or maybe you go back to the Tutsis and the Hutus. I mean, there's lots of horrible atrocities the world has observed. But this is up there. This is without question up there, and we support it. So if somebody says, I can't think of one area where I would do anything differently than full-blown support of genocide, that seems extreme to me. I mean, doesn't that seem extreme to you? Maybe I'm missing something here.
No, I think you're right. I think she's not really coming out as strongly as she should. She should be really emphasizing the differences between her and President Biden, because people don't really like, at least they think they don't like the way this country's been going economically and other ways. So she's not campaigning very smart, but at least she's within reality. She's not, she's in the real world. Donald Trump is in a world where everybody's an enemy and everybody's out to get him, and, they're persecuting him and everything. It's just all about him. Kamala Harris is trying to say, hey, I care about the rest of the people. Here's what I'd like to do. And, she should be doing better, and she's not. So I don't know what's going to happen.
Arlen, let's acknowledge, for the sake of argument, and I don't think it's untrue, by the way, but I that's not as important to me, that Trump is as unhinged as you describe, and he's demented, and he's a danger, as Kamala Harris has frequently said. Does that mean you can't have a conversation with a Trump supporter, with a MAGA, and discuss areas where you still might have agreement? The Trump supporter might well, and I'm not saying this to be, this is how I believe. This is what I feel. I have talked to Trump supporters, and and there have been some I've had real difficulties with. I remember getting into it with a woman who was very critical, I guess, of, I don't remember who it was, but I don't know. I was holding a rally. I kind of regret doing this now, but that was saying Trump should be banned from the ballot because of the insurrection on January 6th. And while I think there's a fair argument to make, it's still an anti-democratic one. It should be up to the people to decide whom their president is. But I got into it. This woman started, screaming MAGA, MAGA. And I said, hey, listen, I understand why you're so, you have such disdain for the Democrats, but do you feel the same way about Bernie? And she's like, yes, he's awful. He's hard. I said, so you don't believe you should have health care? You shouldn't have to pay for, you don't believe that if your child gets sick, that you should be able to take them to the doctor without having to pay for it. And she started arguing, that won't work. That'll never work. That's socialism. So that's where, I agree. It can be very, very difficult to get into an area, find any areas of agreement with certain people. But that said, I think we should try. I think we should recognize these people are fellow Americans. There are, in truth, Obama to Trump voters. You may not think they're right to change to Trump, but they probably do. There were Bernie to Trump voters. So these are people that at one point you agreed with. Shouldn't we be trying to make common cause with fellow Americans rather than demonizing them and viewing them as the other, or calling them racist, or whatever else people do who they don't like the person that they're voting for, the other person's voting for?
Yeah, no, I agree. I think we should try to talk to each other. If we could do it and sort of agree on what the truth is, what reality is, and that's not always easy to do. And also, you got somebody like Trump who is really saying, the enemy are the people. All the Democrats. He's starting to, talk very critically of Nancy Pelosi, Adam Schiff, like they should go to jail or something. And he's really threatening pretty much of a, authoritarian dictatorship, and it's scary because he could do it. I mean, he tried to do a lot of things last time, but he had people around him that wouldn't let him. But he's going to have only his own loyalists around now, and you've heard what the people who worked with him before have said. They think it's horrible, the idea of him becoming president again. But it just keeps, so it's hard to talk with the other side, but, we really have to do it. They are human beings. I'll concede that.
Well, that's a major concession, Arlen. So we'll appreciate you perceiving them as humans. So our closest ally, Israel, though, apparently does not perceive Palestinians as human beings, or at least if they are, they're not Palestinians who deserve to live, to deserve the right to even have a life. So this is from yesterday's Daily Sabah. I'm not sure where the Daily Sabah is published, but I couldn't get updated death rates, death toll for today, but 84 killed yesterday by Israel. The carnage is as bad as ever in Gaza, over 42,600. And of course, we all know that's a very significant underestimation of the real number of dead. Doctors saying they think the number's in the hundreds of thousands. We know Israel is shooting children with bullets. It just couldn't be worse there. So I just really wanted to, as I always do, center the victims of our and Israeli genocide. 640 killed just in North Gaza. Israel has said they want an end to Hamas. They cleared out North Gaza a while ago, but apparently they're not satisfied because they went back and they're just committing more atrocities there. So the situation is absolutely horrific. And I just want to play a clip because I've been often accused, and I think possibly fairly so, of being a little soft on Trump. So let me try to fix that, because my criticisms of the Democratic Party, which are extremely serious and significant and are always there, should not ever be interpreted as positive remarks regarding this gentleman. So let me play this for you.
Clearly, go ahead.
Does the death of Steve Harvey make peace easier or more difficult?
I think it makes it easier.
Why is that?
You got to talk to Prime Minister Netanyahu about it.
He's called me, yes.
What was that conversation?
He's called me. I have not spoken. I'm going to speak to him probably now.
What are you going to tell him?
Well, look, he's doing a good job. Biden is trying to hold him back. Just so you understand, Biden is far superior to the VP. He's trying to hold him back, and he probably should be doing the opposite, actually. I'm glad that Bibi decided to do what he had to do, but it's moving along pretty good. Everything's moving along. Yes, you have.
All right, so there's Trump just absolutely glorifying the Israeli massacres. That was over the weekend. Arlen, I watched that, and I really have no hope, because except for Jill Stein, we don't have a candidate who is saying what Israel is doing is simply wrong. It's a crime against humanity. I can't get excited about Kamala, but I can certainly understand your concern about Trump.
Yeah, certainly Kamala's not doing enough regarding the Middle East, about Gaza and all the killing that goes on there. And it's just inexcusable. I can't excuse it. She's very cautious about and afraid to really take on the government of Israel and Netanyahu. But somebody's going to have to, because, Israel's not going to get anywhere trying to kill off all of Hamas, because they're the ones in control of Gaza. No one else is. And if you want to kill every one of the Hamas fighters, you're going to have to kill everybody, every civilian. And I don't think right now Netanyahu would really care. He's not, he doesn't want to give the Palestinians, a power that they should have, because they've lived there for so long. And, you have to go to a two-state solution, I think. And right now it doesn't look like anybody is really pushing that right now.
All right. Well, I have argued, that neither candidate, neither the Democrats nor the Republicans, are proposing any solution except more killing. But that could be belied. What do you think of this story? I covered this last week, Arlen, but it was after Monday, so we didn't talk about it. Any reaction to this story where Blinken sends a letter saying, we need you to do something to let in aid, and if you don't, in 30 days, we might cut you off? We're suggesting that our military aid to you could be at risk after the election. Do you find that to be in any way a satisfying or positive sign?
Of course not. Harris campaign has been, saying for such a long time that they want to more, give the Israelis a chance to back off a little bit, but they're not wanting to do that. And so, if they're not willing to do it, then it's not going to get done. And 30 days is a long time when you're talking about withholding humanitarian aid and withholding food and all that. I mean, that's just way too long. They they should be saying, we'll give you a week at the most, or 3 or 4 days at the most, but not 30 days. Otherwise, it's just empty threats like we've had for so long.
Oh, it's terrible. And I'll just show this. I actually showed this clip before, Arlen, but I highlighted part of it to show that the letter has had zero impact on Bibi whatsoever. The genocide unfolding in northern Gaza, this was from yesterday, or maybe this morning. I'm sorry. It's this morning, October 21. And I highlighted it. Rescue workers banned from accessing besieged areas. So again, Israel is keeping anyone out who could document, what they're doing. It's tough because people have cell phones. So you see cell phone movies and videos and stuff like that. And there are some journalists. So it's tough for Israel to keep all news out, but they're doing a hell of a job keeping any aid from getting to these folks that they're bombing and shooting and whose homes they're destroying. See, and I get to this. I don't want to be too tendentious. I really just wanted to give you your voice, but I think it's fair to ask again, given what we're seeing now unfold. And I remember you said, Arlen, one time I asked you, is there anything that could change your mind about Kamala? And you said, well, I really want her to take a different position. I want her to say that what Israel is doing is wrong. And she's just not. She will not do that. In fact, you can see, let me see if I can get this up because I'm playing around. I'm having a little trouble. I did some updates to my computer. I think it's Windows 11. Windows 11 has broken itself with these crazy updates, and they've made it very, very difficult. You can read, now see, I should be, I hate to make excuses, but it's true. Windows 11 deserves the blame, not me. So here, why Harris remains unlikely to break from Biden. She's never said she's going to break from Biden. In fact, she said just the opposite. She always centers the Israelis. She expressed glee at the killing of the Sinwar, the former Hamas leader who's now dead. I guess explain to me your thought process when you say, okay, well, it's really important to me. This is an important issue, but I'm still full blown in support of Kamala, and I'm still far more troubled by a Trump presidency than by a Kamala Harris presidency.
Well, I think what you have is that there's two sides to this. There's a very strong, pro-Israeli side in both Israel and the United States. And if she looks like she's trying to, take us away from that and not support Israel, that would certainly hurt her a lot, and she would lose a lot of money and all kinds of things like that. But at the same time, she has, what's going on in Israel, I think it's really bad because Netanyahu is at a point where he's been very successful militarily, elsewhere in, Iran and, with Hezbollah and all that. And I think that's going to help his popularity and make the Israeli people not so much in favor of getting rid of him like they were before. I think if he was at election, he'd probably win now. So yeah, I'd like Kamala to be a stronger, but she's already made up her mind. She's going to support Israel all the way, and I hope she, continues to at least regret all the civilian deaths and all the killings.
All right. Well, there it is. Her position isn't going to change, and your support for her is going to continue. Betting odds. This has got to make you nervous. I usually put polling results, but Trump is up 20 points in the odds. And this is a weird way. Usually the way American odds work is you get plus 100, plus 200. If you're a favorite, you're minus. So if it's a plus 200, that means you bet 100, you get 200 if you win, plus your $100 back. If it's minus 50, then you have to bet 100 and you get 50 back. You know, that's how that works. So plus your original bet. So obviously you always get your original bet back if you win. So they do 60-40. I don't know how that works with these odds. But Arlen, I mean, you see the same polls. Why do you think the odds accurately reflect who's going to win? If you were going to bet right now, given these odds, I assume you'd put your money down on Harris, which means you'd get more than, your bet back plus the original.
Well, I wouldn't bet, who I want to win. That's not something I do. But, as far as the polls go, there's no question that, Trump has stayed in there, stayed close, and now people are calling it, pretty much an even race. And he's even making some ground in a lot of places. But, so I was getting kind of very discouraged. But now I'm thinking, well, when November 5th comes around, a lot of it's not going to be about polls. It'll be about motivation, about turnout, and how enthusiastic people are. And so I'm hoping that if Trump gets crazier and crazier and stupider, that people say, why take a chance on, that moron? We've had him before, and 4 more years would be even worse. So I'm thinking it'll be young people, it'll be women, at least I hope, and it'll be minorities, maybe blacks and Hispanics will be more motivated to come out and support Harris. That's what I'm hoping, but,
Well, of the groups you mentioned, Harris does do extremely well among women. I think she may be doing better even than Biden did. And I've heard commentators say, and I think it's persuasive, that because choice is on the ballot in a way that it hasn't been in the past, reproductive rights, that could help Harris, right? That there are going to be people who go into the ballot box and say, you know what, I can't vote against the right to choose, so I'll vote for Harris. And maybe that's true. I mean, I think that's a persuasive argument. But interestingly, the other two groups you've identified, people of color and young voters, have moved, according to the polls, pretty significantly towards Trump. Now, that doesn't mean he's winning either group, but he's doing better. Given how absolutely out of bounds you view Trump, how you think of him as somebody who's completely, unacceptable. He's not reasonable. He's not rational, whereas Kamala Harris is a straight down the middle type of candidate. Why do you think so many people, especially many who are marginalized, would be gravitating toward Trump?
Well, I'd like them to think, continue to think about it. And when it comes time to vote, they have to really decide, do they want this crazy person as president, or they want somebody that's more sane and reasonable, that will give them some choices. That's what I think they'll come back, I hope, to what they usually do.
But that doesn't make you say to yourself, gee, maybe Harris is also a really bad choice. Maybe the fact that young voters who tend to be more progressive, that people of color who are not doing as well, let's face it, who are not doing well, many of them are gravitating toward Trump. Maybe that means Harris just really isn't someone who deserves my support.
Well, there's a big difference between Trump and Harris. I mean, Trump is totally unlike anybody we've had before. He is scary. He's been talking, about jailing his enemies and, just getting, revenge on all the people who have criticized him. Well, Kamala is more, a reasonable person. She sounds like a reasonable candidate. She's trying to, explain and talk about what Trump, has been promoting. And, she's normal. Trump is not normal. And I think he's scary. And I'm hoping that the voters will think of that when it comes time to vote.
Arlen Grossman with us, the thought leader. He blogs at thebigpicturereport.com. And Arlen, this was an article you urged me to platform, I guess, to promote, and you want to discuss. So What more does Kamala Harris have to do to win? Tell me why this article appealed to you, and we can go through it in detail if you want. I have I copied almost all of it and put almost all of it on slides because there was much of it that really intrigued me.
Well, actually, I'm pretty pleased with the way she's been doing things of late. I think she's been on TV more, exposing herself more to the media. She's been taking questions. I mean, she went over to Fox News and had an interview with Bret Baier, which obviously didn't turn out so well. But he was, I think, excessively mean to her. But the fact is, she's out there. She's putting herself out there, and she's pointing out very clearly all the things that Trump could do that would be bad for the country. And she's doing all she can. I think that's about the best she can possibly do at this point.
All right, Arlen Grossman with us. Arlen, was there anything in particular that stood out for you in that article?
Just the part about maybe she hasn't made herself that much different than Biden. She hasn't really said, hey, I'm going to do this differently than Biden. She's saying, I will do my own thing, but she's not being specific as to what those things would be. So I'd like her to, come up with some ideas that'll show the contrast between her and Trump.
All right, Arlen, I want to share with you a couple, since you're not identifying any that really you like. I know you like the column, but I wanted to show you a few snippets I took from it and get your thoughts, because I think they really do explain very well why Harris is struggling and why she may lose to somebody that I think we all agree should not be president. And this is at the very beginning, by the way. Video clip of Harris talking to a young girl about leadership. Her advice: you never have to ask anyone permission to lead. When you want to lead, just lead. I mean, color me crazy, but I didn't think that was how democracy worked. I didn't think you just get to decide you're going to lead everybody. You do actually have to ask voters permission to lead, and then they get to decide who their leader is. Isn't that the way democracy is supposed to work?
I suppose, but when you think about the terrible position she's in, really, I mean, she's been vice president for 4 years with Biden. She can't really overtly criticize him and say he did a bad job, obviously not. So, and she's sort of stuck with, being a part of his administration, and certainly the Republicans have made a big point about saying, hey, it's your administration, you did this, and all these bad things happened in your administration. So, she's in a tough position. She can't be overly critical of Biden, but I would like to see her say a few things more and be a little bit stronger about it, though.
Well, I'm not saying she should. This I don't think goes quite to the question of being critical of Biden. I think this goes to the question of leadership and who gets to make decisions in a democracy. And I think it's kind of ironic because she says you don't have to ask anyone's permission to lead. But again, and I already said this, so I don't want to repeat myself. Generally, but not in this cycle, and Trump certainly fits this, you do have to get the permission of voters. So Trump won the primaries in 2016 in Republican primaries. He won the primaries in 2020. He won the primaries in 2024. The people in the Republican Party chose Donald Trump to be their leader. And in 2016, he got the votes in the bizarre, stupid way we do it with the Electoral College. But still, he did get the permission of voters under the rules that we have. In 2020, Kamala Harris did not get the permission of voters. Voters didn't want her to lead. They said, we don't think you're the right person to be on the ballot, to be the president. Joe Biden said, I don't care. I want you to be my vice presidential candidate. Fine, that's the way it works. And she was elected vice president. In 2024, the voters not one voter has said in a ballot box, you are the person I want to be my leader. And I think this has people very, very upset and saying, well, wait, that's not the way democracy should work.
Well, that's the bad position she's in. She was just selected to be the presidential candidate, and she wasn't voted in, and there's no way that she can be voted in. But, at the same time, Trump is acting like he's going to be a dictator. He's going to run the entire show. And as I've spoken about many times, Hal, the Republican Party is not a party anymore. They've totally gone over to Trump 100%. I was listening to Speaker Mike Johnson, and he was saying, "Oh, don't listen to the things Trump says. He doesn't really mean it." You know, a lot of Republicans are saying that, but he's saying it loud and clear, and people have to pay attention.
No, I mean, we agree. Don't vote for Trump. There's no argument there. We both agree no one should vote for Trump, but where we disagree is whether anyone should vote for Kamala Harris. So I got a whole bunch of different clips from the article, but let me throw this one out here because I also wanted to play. You mentioned the Bret Baier interview, and I was thinking of the Bret Baier interview when I read this section. Never has Harris taken the bait. In other words, when Trump, makes comments about her, I don't even know what he says. I really don't pay a lot of attention to Trump. Whenever I watch Trump, I'm like, oh my gosh, this guy is awful. Oh, how horrible is he? Maybe I really do need to vote for Harris. And then I watch a clip of Harris and I'm appalled. And then I don't say I should vote for Trump, but I just say there's no way I'm voting for her. So according to the LA Times editorial writer here, never has she been drawn into a trash talk brawl. So I was thinking, I don't think that is true at all. So let me play you this clip with Kamala on. You mentioned the Bret Baier program, and you can even see my little note to myself, unstable, because I think calling someone unstable is trash talk, even if it's not inaccurate. Here she is with Bret Baier. You tell me if this is a trash talk brawl, Arlen.
You say now
he's unstable. He is unstable, Brett.
He's not well. You say he's mentally not stable.
He's not stable.
Let me ask you this. You told many interviewers that Joe Biden was on his game, that ran around circles on his staff. When did you first notice that President Biden's mental faculties appeared diminished?
Joe Biden, I have watched from the Oval Office to the Situation Room, and he has the judgment and the experience to do exactly what he has done in making very important decisions on behalf of the American people.
There were no concerns raised?
Brett, Joe Biden is not on the ballot.
I understand.
And Donald Trump
but
is.
You talked about it.
And Donald Trump
After George Clooney said within a few minutes of talking to President Biden at a fundraiser that he thought this was not the same Joe Biden that we saw on the debate stage.
Donald Trump is on the ballot.
I understand. You met with him at least once a week for 3.5 years. You didn't have any concerns?
I think the American people have a concern about Donald Trump, which is why the people who know him best, including leaders of our national security community, have all spoken out. Even people who worked for him in the Oval Office, worked with him in the Situation Room, and have said he is unfit and dangerous and should never be president of the United States again.
All right, so you don't think that's trash talk, Arlen? Because that sure seems like trash talk to me.
I like what she's doing. She's really coming back strong, and she has to. She can't let Bret Baier get away with all that, pushing and talking over her.
Seems like a fair question, to be honest, Arlen. I mean, step back from your hyper-partisanship. Isn't it a perfectly legitimate question? She's saying Trump is unstable, he's dangerous, which is trash talk, regardless of what the editorial writer says.
There's a lot of evidence.
And I was thinking, well, maybe it's not fair for Baier to ask that because she's right. Biden's on the ballot. But here's the thing. If she's going to set herself up as an arbitrator of who's unstable and who's dangerous, then isn't it perfectly legit for Baier to say to her, well, wait a second. If Trump's got these problems, you've been around this guy Biden for all that time. Did you ever notice anything was wrong with him? Doesn't that seem to go to that very question of whether she's credible, whether she's able to distinguish somebody's mental acuity?
Hal, it's so unfair to ask her about Biden. What's she going to say? Oh, no, yeah, I've noticed he's falling apart and he can't do his job. She can't do that. She's got to at least say that he was okay, not a problem. But the thing is about Harris, I don't think people are afraid of her. She's not scary. She's not going to take over everything and control the country the way that Trump wants to control the country. She's not going to be a dictator. She's going to work with her staff, with Congress and all that. But Trump as far as we know, is only going to work for Trump. He's only going to do what's best for him, and he's going to punish those who don't like what he's doing.
Let me give you what I think would have been a much better answer, and you tell me if you agree with this. You know, Brett, I was in a lot of meetings with President Biden, and he was sharp, he was focused, he always had really good ideas, he listened to his advisors. We recognized that he was able to make the decisions and make good decisions in the years that I worked with him. But when time for a re-election came around, it was clear that he has slowed down. His speaking style definitely reflects his age. He may not be quite as quick with the reposts, which is important when you're debating. So even though when it comes to making decisions, we were very comfortable with the decisions. I was certainly comfortable with him. I admired him. I've always learned from President Biden. The fact is, when it comes to a mano debate, and we saw this, President Biden has lost a step. And that doesn't mean he couldn't make the decisions that the American people have counted on him to make. He would have continued to make those decisions. But when it comes to those sound bites and that back and forth on a debate stage in front of undecided voters, there was a recognition that he had, and yes, frankly, I did too, that he probably wasn't going to be the ideal candidate for re-election. That's the answer.
Well, that's a great answer, but she would never have time to say all that.
Well, she said she had time to argue with him and say he is unstable and cut him off. She had time to say all of that.
Yeah, but
she would have had time. He would have let her give that answer. He would have let her give that.
No, he wouldn't let her do that. I mean, have you ever seen any interviews on Fox that were like what Bret Baier was doing with Kamala? I mean, would she ask this?
So here's the TLDR. In all of our meetings up until re-election campaign season started, Joe Biden was compos mentis. He made good decisions. He listened. He knew what he was doing. However, when we saw him in the debate with President Trump or ex-President Trump, whatever, we realized that in the moment, under the lights, he has lost a step. He can still make great decisions. He would still be a great president. He is still a great president. But in the debate setting, yes, that is when I recognized he might not be the perfect opponent to defeat this dangerous Republican.
Yeah, if she had the time to say all that, it wouldn't.
That's not a lot of time to say it. That would have taken less time than what she did say.
Let her say all that. I mean,
and it would have been a much better answer. Of course, he could have. All right. Well, I made my point.
Also, Al, there's nothing that would help her very much in criticizing Biden. I don't think that would help her in any way.
That's not criticizing him. That's acknowledging what we all saw and we all know. That's not criticizing him at all. In fact, she'd be praising him. She'd be saying he made great decisions throughout. That's why there's very little I can think of, because she said it. I mean, I don't agree with this, but she could have said, that's why there's very little I can think of I would do differently, because President Biden was consistently making good decisions. Maybe he'd take a little longer today than he did 30 years ago to come to the same decisions, but he was still able to. In fact, he was, his wisdom often probably led him to even better decisions, even if it might take him an extra 30 seconds to get to those.
Well, I think, what she needs to say is Joe Biden is not on the ballot. We don't need to talk about Joe Biden and how he did, because I'm the one that's running for president. In fact, I think she did say that. And not Joe Biden. So the issue should be me, what I'm going to do, my decisions, my policies, because, I'm the one that's going to be running the country as president. So, I just don't think Bret Baier would give her that kind of time to say that.
All right, let's get back to the Carla Hall editorial. I have one more. This is the last paragraph, I believe, where Carla Hall explains exactly why she supports Harris. And she says, I want to watch Ketanji Brown Jackson, the first black woman to become a Supreme Court justice, swear in the first black and South Asian woman to become president. I want to imagine what it would be like if my parents had lived to see that. So I want to get your response to that. But before I do, I want to just give you my response. I supported Bernie Sanders for president in 2016 and 2020. And if someone had asked me why and asked me to write an essay there wouldn't have been one sentence that said, I want to watch the first Jewish man become president. That wouldn't have even been on the list. I would have said, I want to see the slaughter of Palestinians end. I want to see us make peace with Russia. I know you don't want to see that, but I want to see that. I want to see us guarantee health care for every single American. I want to see blah, blah, blah. And that's why I support Bernie Sanders. His identity wouldn't have even been on the list, because that's the first thing, that the only thing really that Carla Hall can point to. It says to me that this is a candidate that really isn't going to deliver anything for the American people. And the issues that maybe Carla Hall, as a privileged person who's an editorial page of the LA Times, she'll get a certain satisfaction from seeing a black woman. But I've seen comments on Facebook where people, there already was a black president and he didn't do a lot of things for the black people. In fact, a lot of things went bad for black people under Obama's presidency. So this ain't going to go very far, is it?
Well, it is, probably the wrong thing to do to talk about that she's black and she's South Asian and she's a woman. I don't think that's really helping the Democrats. There's a lot of people who don't respond to that, who are very resentful of that. And they just want to know, is she good enough? Is she, a strong enough president? And, all this stuff about, race and religion and, gender and all that is not going to help Kamala. And I think it's a problem for Democrats, and that's why they're not doing as well as they should.
Why aren't they focusing on her wonderful policies that will bring everyone a unicorn? And because remember, Hillary would mock Bernie for talking about Medicare for all. He's going to promise everyone a pony in their garden. And I think what Bernie talked about was very effective and had a lot of, brought him up from virtually nil in the polls to running even or maybe even slightly ahead of Hillary at some points in that race. So why, when American public are desperate for policy discussions, for candidates who will put the interests of the American public first, why do these pundits focus on, and Democratic shills and their like, focus so much on identity?
It's not a winning. It's not a winning idea for the Democrats to do that. She's really in a position where she has to promote her policies like health care and all that kind of all the domestic issues. And at the same time, she has to point out that Trump is really dangerous and scary, and look at the things he's saying and what he's going to do if he becomes president. So she's got to do both. She's got to get her policies out there, and she's got to point out the problems with Trump.
Are you watching Halitics? We got about 15 more minutes. We've got Arlen with us. Hope you're enjoying the program. And I was going to focus for a little bit, but maybe we'll get to it. I won't right now. Why black men and Latino men are not feeling it the way many think they should. But I want to get this. This is a really important story, Arlen. And again, you make very, very powerful and I think compelling arguments why people shouldn't vote for Donald Trump. And I agree with them. I just think where we disagree is whether people should vote for Kamala. So here is the New York Times. I guess this is, it's so hard to tell the way they do their stuff, but I guess this is their magazine. Tell us why this article is important and we should bear it in mind.
Well, there's a lot of very powerful people, a lot of very wealthy people who really want Trump to win. And they're putting a lot of money, and the system that we have, they can put as much money as they like. And here you have the richest person in the world on Trump's side. So he's going to do everything he can to, help Trump win. And at the same time, he's going to be put in a position of power where he can have a lot of influence on, our agencies and regulation. And, he could do a lot of damage, I think, to the country, just because he would focus on what helps him. And I think that would, that's not good to have the richest person in the world be in charge of so many things.
100%, Arlen. You can read here. I put this up. Musk throws his fortune behind Trump, and in response, or as I guess payback, Trump has vowed to make Musk head of a new government efficiency commission with the power to recommend wide-ranging cuts at federal agencies and changes to federal rules. So obviously, it doesn't take a rocket scientist to figure out how bad that is, because Musk will almost undoubtedly recommend cuts to any agencies that would protect us from him, that would prevent him from doing all sorts of harm, that might tax him at a higher rate, that might require him to treat his workers with some measure of decency and safety and protect the American people, that would hold him responsible for damage or harm that his businesses do. So there's no question this is terrible. And this is really just more of what we've seen, I think, for 40, 50 years, Arlen, where government has become more and more captive to those with money and power. And this is, kind of that horrible trend on steroids.
Yeah. We've spoken about that, how the rich and the wealthy seem to have more and more power. And we talked about it the last week or two when I've been talking about the fact that with Citizens United, there's no limit on what rich people can put into a campaign. They could put, all their money into a campaign and no one's going to stop them. And in many cases, it's dark money, so nobody even realizes who's giving them money. That's way too much power for these people. And a lot of them realize, hey, I could save a lot on taxes if Trump gets elected, so it's worth it. They only care about themselves.
No, all right. And I appreciate that, Arlen. Sorry, people heard my cough. I thought I muted my cough. Arlen, yeah, no, that's accurate. Let me turn it back on to Kamala. Do you have hopes that Harris will take on this neo-fascist dynamic where big business is making decisions, is writing laws, is electing politicians?
Well, she'll keep it under control a lot more than Trump would. Trump would give, Elon Musk or his friends whatever they want. He wouldn't care. I think Harris would at least keep things under control and try. And, another thing to think about, too, is Congress. I worry about what's the makeup of Congress, because Kamala won't be able to do hardly anything at all if the Republicans are in charge of the Senate and the House. So, it's a tough time we're in now. I wish she was way ahead and that she would sweep lots of other down ballot Democrats into office, but it's not going to happen apparently this election.
Well, I just wanted to show, because you mentioned Congress. So I think one of the areas that I find very, very troubling, and I don't think, and I could be wrong, I haven't heard Harris say one word about it, but is the profits that Congress makes from war. So you have a bunch of Congress members, and I want to be fair, the majority of whom are Republican, who own stock in defense contractors. So when they authorize our tax money to purchase weapon systems for Ukraine and Israel, they're actually paying themselves because they own shares, they own pieces of Raytheon and Lockheed Martin and other and Boeing. So our tax money is being used to buy weapons that will kill kill Palestinians and ultimately lead to more Israelis, that kill Lebanese, kill Gazans, that will kill Russians, that will lead to more dead Ukrainians, see cities blown up, eradicated, and will also make our Congress members richer. And I haven't heard Kamala say anything about that. And I'm very, very troubled. Now, that doesn't mean I'm not troubled by the power that Musk will wield. I am. But it all goes together, Arlen.
Yeah, it does. But I think it's really up to Congress to say, first of all, these Congress people are able to get anything they want on the stock market, and they don't seem to be restrained at all. There doesn't seem to be laws against it, rules against it. But something, even if they weren't personally, if the Democrats or Republicans weren't personally getting money from all this war footing and all the weapons and all that. The fact is that those companies are going to be donating to them, and if they vote favorably for those military firms and military industrial complex, then they're just going to get giant donations and they'll stay in office, and so they're happy with that.
Except unless we, the voters, who have only one time every 4 years or every 2 years where we have any leverage, vote against these corrupt politicians, unless we vote against these corrupt political parties. We have an opportunity to do so. I don't know why we don't take advantage of that. Arlen, I would note, and I want to look at this list. This is the top, 15, I don't know. I have all the list, but this is from Unusual Whales, which I believe is a very, has been shown to be a credible site. So the top three are three Republicans. I don't even know who Kevin Hearn and Mark Green are. Tommy Tuberville, this tells me how much money you make as a football coach, because obviously the higher up on this list, the more money you have in defense stocks, the more money you have, period. So this guy was the football coach at Auburn, I believe, for many years and must have made many millions of dollars.
Oh, you're right.
Tuberville. Yeah. So there you go. Number 4, La Pelosi. And then you got a couple more Republicans. I'll tell you what really upset me. Look at that. Ro Khanna is on this list, Arlen.
Yeah. Well, yeah, there are liberals, there are conservatives. There's a lot of people in Congress that are making good money, and they're very happy with the system, and they don't want to change it. And they're going to do what they can to give favorable attention to the people that are donating to them. And that's the problem with politics right now. It's all about money. It's who can you help? Who's going to donate money to help you get elected, and then help the corporations and this and that. The American people don't really have a lot of clout in our government.
Well, we don't have to vote for these people. We could vote for somebody else. See, I think that's where there's a disconnect between you and me. We don't have to vote for them.
Yes, you're right, but it's just not going to happen any differently now unless we change the system, and we're not going to change the system that I can see anytime in the near future. So, I wish, like we've said I've said many times, I'd like to see a parliamentary system where you'd have a lot of diverse parties, a lot of diverse opinions. In this country, it's just you have basically two pro-capitalist parties, and that's all. That's the only choice.
Well, we have a third choice. We have fourth choice, fifth choice, emerging party candidate Jill Stein. We have that option. Now, you can say we don't. You can say she won't win. I agree with that, sadly, but we do have that choice, and I don't know why we wouldn't exercise it unless, as you argue, there's something significantly better about one of them than the other. I don't see it. You do. So maybe that's the difference. But I put the thumbnail back up because this is the question I really have, because I'm arguing we shouldn't vote for Harris first, I don't think she'd be. I'm not really more worried about Trump. I'm very worried about both of them. Neither one worries me a lot more than the other. But also the argument I think that I do find somewhat persuasive is it's not very persuasive. It's a little tiny bit persuasive. Maybe if we withhold our vote from the Democrats, maybe, just maybe, they'll change a little bit. Do you think there's any likelihood of that happening?
Well, I hope it would. I mean, I hope people will, think a second time about what the Democratic Party should be, that it can be better. It could be more pro-worker, pro-union, do a lot more than they're doing now, because unfortunately, the Democratic Party has gotten more to the right in the last couple of decades, and they're taking advantage of, the big companies, the rich people and all that. And, the American people really don't have anybody on their side. I mean, I wish it'd be great if Bernie was 20 years younger. I'd certainly support him, and maybe he would have a chance. But so I don't know who the Democrats would pick the next time if Trump wins, which I hope he certainly doesn't. And then you got to ask, if Trump loses, who will the Republicans want to take over for him? So I don't know. We're at an interesting point in history.
this is my final word on this, and then I can move on to something else. But I do want your thought. I get the argument, and I understand certain people in certain marginalized groups will say, well, you know, as bad as Harris is, for my discrete identity group, trans, my discrete identity group, teenage girl who could become pregnant, I get the argument that Harris wouldn't be as bad. I do.
Yeah, and like I said,
but that said, do you think there's any real chance that if Trump wins, I mean, what does the Democrat Party do? We've seen in the past they don't change, right? They're resistant to any kind of soul searching or reconsideration of their policies. They don't do those, what do they call them, postmortems? Hillary's loss, according to Tom Hartman, taught the Democratic Party a lesson. That's something he wrote. I have no idea what lesson that was, because they just renominated another Hillary. I mean, she's basically Hillary, just younger, darker skinned. That's about it. I don't know. I don't see any policy differences, which is what I think matter. So even though I argue possibly they might change, I think it's going to take a lot more than one Trump win. I think it's going to take a period of time where the people who run this party are made terrified of losing their, and people like AOC have to stop voting for Hakeem Jeffries to be their leader.
Well, the problem for you, Hal, and for Jill Stein is the country is not on the same page as you are. They're not very progressive. They're not very liberal. There's a lot of strong conservative points of view that are, you know, pushing their point of view. You know, I just don't see the leftward turn that would make the Democratic Party a majority party, at least not yet. I'd like to see that. You know, I wish Bernie, you know, could run again and be younger. And
but wait, is that my problem, or is that the problem, the American people's problem? Is that the world's problem, that the Democratic Party is so corrupt, is so unwilling to move, and that those few people who maybe really had some decency in them, like Obama, like AOC, become corrupt? Is that my problem? I'm doing pretty well. I don't view myself as having, so, you know, people say, oh, I feel bad for you, you're depressed. Don't feel bad for me. I have health care. I have a secure retirement. I have a beautiful house. I get to go on vacation. Don't feel bad for me. Feel bad for the people being bombed and blown out of their houses and out of their residences and being locked up, and feel sorry for people who are living on the streets, and there are more of them in this country than ever before. That's who you should feel sorry for, Arlen.
Well, yeah, and I do. I mean, you know, I'd like more people to be maybe closer to you on many issues, you know, as far as, you know, healthcare and you know, hunger and all the climate change and abortion and all that. I mean, you know, you've got some pretty good views on that, but you know, people don't
you think they are? Isn't that why the Democratic Party is losing? Because it doesn't embrace progressive views. Isn't that the reason we are in this pickle? Because they're just as bad or almost as bad. And I was gonna, you know, there are 5 reasons, according to Nate Cohn, why black people aren't feeling Kamala, right? And it's not what Obama says, which is that they're racist. So let me just put this up real quick. These are reasons 4 and 5. There's a lot more to it, but according to Cohn, the end of hope and change, even beyond the poor state of the economy, there's something deeper holding Democrats back, a sense that voting for them just won't make much of a difference. So, in other words, the ideas that Obama ran on, hope and change, he did talk about healthcare quite a bit in 20 against Hillary, but he bailed out the big banks. He expanded our war footprint. He expanded the security state. He expanded our drilling. All of those things didn't do anything for American people. So that's why it's not because people aren't to the left. It's because the Democratic Party is corrupt.
Well, I don't know about corrupt. At least they do some things that are helpful. They try to, make policies that help middle class and working people. I mean, they do at least that much. The Republicans won't even do that. But yeah, it is a problem. There's not going to be much of a major change if Kamala gets to be president. And Donald Trump does represent a big difference and somebody that's a whole lot different. But I think he's just too extreme and too crazy to be that person that's going to make those kind of changes.
Well, I agree. Donald Trump isn't going to make things better for, on the margins, look, both of them will have some policies that will make life better for some people. It's true. I mean, I'm not going to dispute that. But in general, the slide that we've seen, the erosion of security for most Americans, the erosion of economic security, the ever harsher environment, and I mean environment, the ecological environment, the deaths that we're exporting around the world, it doesn't matter. They're both going to make that situation worse. And that's why I'm not voting for them.
Yeah. And I think people realize that the world and this country are in pretty bad shape right now. There's just a lot of bad things happening that, our political system doesn't seem to want to change. And, until somebody comes along that's willing to talk about that kind of change, important change like Bernie did, unless that happens, we're just going to keep going on.
Well, Jill Stein's talking about those things.
Well, but nobody, there's people, she's not popular. She's not going to win. She doesn't, and she certainly wouldn't have the press on her side, the media and all that. So she just doesn't have a chance.
Well, Bernie didn't have the media on his side. The media was totally against Bernie.
And well, he lost. He came close. He did well, but in the end, he lost because, well, there's just big money in politics in the Democratic Party that they didn't want somebody like Bernie in there who might threaten, their profits. So, I wish it were so, but it wasn't.
Arlen, it's always great to have you on, and you always put up with my pointed, challenging, difficult questions, and I appreciate that very much. And I know a lot of people watch these programs and say, Arlen's right, hell, you don't know what you're talking about, you're getting your head up your ass. And I'm like, really? That's your takeaway? But obviously it is. I can't speak for explain that, but you probably can. In fact, you can. Arlen, any last words? Don't forget bigpicturereport.com. I didn't see anything new up. There's no new content lately, or at least no new original content?
No, I'm just very focused on this election, and I'm looking for something that will show me that, Democrats are going to come out and more powerfully, to be more motivated, come out in bigger numbers. Like I say, I hope I'll see more Black people, Hispanic people, young people, realizing that, if they don't vote for Kamala, they're going to be in trouble and the whole country will be in trouble. So,
well, you might well see that, Arlen. I wouldn't be surprised. I won't be surprised whatever happens, but you may well see a Democratic win, and we did see that in 22. It's true the Democrats lost control of the House, but they maintained the Senate, which was really a surprise, and that election went much better for the Democratic Party than many anticipated. So I don't see why that. It could happen again, and maybe it will, and maybe the abortion decision will be the big kahuna, the big unspoken kahuna. We'll find out. We'll find out in just a little over 2 weeks. It'll be pretty exciting. It is exciting.
And it's going to go on beyond those 2 weeks because there's going to be a lot of lawyers involved. There'll be a lot of lawsuits. A lot of people will not accept the election results. It's going to be, as close as this race is, it's just going to make it really bad. There was the year 2000, we almost had a tie, but this is going to be worse. And, people are desperate to win and will do anything to win.
All right, Arlen, that's going to do it. I appreciate having you on, as always. I think you add a lot to the program. I had a viewer say to me that they only watch when you're on. So that's quite a compliment to you. And you have a great week. We'll talk. Do I have you next Monday? All right, we'll see Arlen in a week, and you'll see me tomorrow. Enjoy your afternoon, or I guess if you're left coast or even mountain zone, it's still morning. Have a great afternoon.